Welcome to Tribal Leaders. My name is Kurt Provost. I'm the host of this show, and I get to introduce you to leaders from around the world who have generated more than $1 million in income from their NuSkin business. And I'm so excited to have this guest on the show today, Eileen Williams from the US. You're calling in from San Diego right now, right?
Yes, I am.
Welcome to the show. I have been so looking forward to this conversation. Now, what I would
I'm happy to be here.
Sorry for the delay then. What I would love to do is, rather than me introducing you, I would like to get you just to kick things off with what you were doing prior to NuSkin and how NuSkin came into your world.
Well, that's a great story, Kurt. Well, I actually I was working in human resources in technology companies here in San Diego. I had a business degree, and I'd actually started after I got my degree working for a company that my dad had started, which was a computer company, and this was in the early 80s. So it was a very cutting-edge company. It was really fun, and we grew really fast, and I loved it, and I loved business, and I loved people. So I started out in finance, but I gravitated to human resources because I really liked the people part of the business. I loved helping people set goals and figure out a way to achieve those goals. And anyway, I was also having our children. So I married a guy I had a crush on when I was 11 years old. That's a whole other story. But
wow.
Yeah, that's a good one. We'll tell that another time. But we were having our children, and as a woman, I really wanted to have it all, and I didn't, being very ambitious, was very successful in the corporate world, but with the demands of a corporate job, it was hard. So by the third baby, I literally, sort of had a little bit of a meltdown and trying to figure out what in the world am I going to do. I have all this drive and ambition and dreams and desires, and I love to work. I never thought of not working, but yet I have these three precious little gifts that they're my world. They're everything, and I was really trying to figure out what in the world I could do to do both, be a good mom and have a business that I could be excited about. So I was literally praying at night. I was looking at different things, and a lot of them, work from home type of things back then. This was in 1990. Were not too exciting. And then I got a call from my best friend, and actually she didn't even call me. I was not even on her list of people to call because I had just had a baby. I mean, literally my baby was a month old, and I had two other children, and I had what looked like the perfect life. I had a very successful career. I was, I looked happy. She didn't think I would be a possibility. So she called to talk to my husband, and my husband was in sales. And of course, people think that those are the perfect people to talk to about the business. So she called him up, and he was just about ready to hang up on her. I mean, not in a bad way, but he was just about ready to end the conversation. And I grabbed the phone and I said, "What is she talking about?" And I heard the story briefly about NuSkin. And I said, "Well, what about me? What would it be something that I could do?" And she invited me to come to a presentation, and I'll never forget sitting in the room with my first presentation, listening to the story of NuSkin, and it was like I just knew that this company was special. I just knew. I loved the story of having a product that was targeted towards the aging population, because I was looking around the room and I noticed that I was not the only person that would care about the way that I looked and the way that I felt as I got older. And I really liked the philosophy of coming out with a higher quality product than what was on the market, but coming out with it more directly. Now, I had never had any experience in sales, so that was scary for me because I thought, uh-oh, you know, what's going to have to happen to me and, you know, to be successful? What am I going to be able to do? So, but I really understood the business, the big picture. I saw, now at this time the company was just in the United States, although the name of the company, they called themselves NuSkin International, which is really funny because they were just in the United States, but they definitely showed that they had vision, and they definitely, they had this, you know, compensation structure that I was very intrigued by, because coming out of human resources, you have to understand, I knew that employees are not a good thing. Employees, as much as I love people, oh my goodness, it's really tough for companies to have employees because there's so much legality around it. There's so many regulations. You have to be so careful. You have to provide all kinds of you know, benefits. There's all kinds of overhead and risk. So being in business and having employees is extremely risky. And so when I looked at this compensation structure and I looked at the average incomes of the top leaders, and I thought, you know, that's CEO level income, and that's available to people that just decide that they want that and they're willing to do the work to get that, and it's all about helping other people. I thought, this is brilliant. So I jumped in, and that was in June of 1990.
Was that right at the end of the that big growth phase, or in the middle of it?
Well, it was right in the middle, because the company grew from 1989 to 1991. It grew from $50 million to $500 million in sales a year. So that I was right in the middle of that growth spurt.
What did the landscape look like? Sorry, just to pause the story then, but what did the landscape look like for NuSkin at that time? I mean, was it exciting? Were people just hearing about NuSkin everywhere?
Well, so this was at a time, it's really an interesting time in history of business, I think, because back then there were a few network marketing companies. Of course, there was one that's been around forever that we all know about, but at that time there were a few that had popped up. So this was one of a few that we had sort of heard about. I wasn't interested in any of the other ones. But when I did hear about NuSkin and I heard the story and I saw the products and the whole philosophy and I looked at the compensation plan, I knew that I just knew, I don't know, it's kind of in you know, my intuition told me that this was a very special company. But the environment at the time was really magical. It was like there were, you know, we were in a presentation, there were 300 people in the room. There was high energy. I wasn't the only person interested. It was like people were interested. It was like the hot knife through butter. It was like it was a hot thing right then. It was really, really fun. But also I believed that the company was going to be a great company.
And so what did your journey look like from there? You jumped in. And what happened?
Well, that's when the fun began. So we, you know, I jumped in. I you know, jumped in with both feet. I thought this would be fun, and it was a magical time. It was a time when literally I would call people up. I would say, I've got this great business I want you to look at. They would come and check it out, and a lot of people got involved, and it was really fun, and I almost thought, hey, I was good at it. So it was great, and it was fun, and things were magical, and then in about the spring of 1991, we got hit with, our company was really looked at very closely by the government here in the United States, and we went through a really rough time. And it was a time that I never questioned the company. I never questioned the management team, and I knew that the company would be fine. But as far as like my confidence in talking about the company, it was very difficult for me because I wasn't a confident network marketer. I was more, I think the industry was so different from my background and kind of my paradigm or my world that that just being in the industry was scary for me. I was never afraid of the company, and I always knew that the company would make it long term. But we were challenged, and it was difficult, and basically my entire organization, you know, everyone pretty much quit because people lost the confidence. They didn't believe, they couldn't see it, and I probably at that time was not a good leader in the ability, you know, I didn't convey that vision strong enough that would give people confidence. So my business went through very difficult time. I did then start focusing on opening up other countries, which is what NuSkin had decided to proceed with their business plan, that they would start to open up other countries. They opened up Canada. I didn't know anyone in Canada. They opened up Hong Kong. I didn't know anyone in Hong Kong or Taiwan. They opened up Taiwan. And then one of the best leaders in the whole world, Nathan Ricks, who I work with very closely, said, well, they're going to open up Japan, and we believe that it's going to be really great. So I started to just network. I didn't know any Japanese. I didn't I didn't know anybody from Japan, but I decided that I would just ask everybody that I knew if they knew anyone that was Japanese or that worked with a Japanese company, and we networked into finding a guy, actually through my husband. My husband at one point was a professional tennis player, traveled the world, and he had met a guy that he was American, but he had gone to Japan, he'd married a Japanese woman, and he was back in the U.S., and we tracked him down, and he was teaching tennis. And we tracked him down, we told him the story, and he said, well, sure, I know a lot of people in Japan. And so we, we worked with him, we sponsored him. He gave me all these names of people. This was back in the day, we didn't have the technology we have today. So the cutting edge technology was to basically type up a letter and fax it to the business person in Japan. And I was able to meet a lot. What?
This is such a different world, faxing off letters to
oh
people
my goodness.
As opposed to today.
Oh my gosh. It was so funny, and there was no Google Translate. You know, I was just hopeful that on the other end they would speak English, and I found a lot of business people in Tokyo do speak English, which was great. Lucky for me. But I made enough contacts, and I set up enough appointments. I ended up going over to Japan, and I met the most amazing people. I mean, I met CEOs of companies and top people. I mean, these people were so great, and all of them told me that it wouldn't work. I mean, all of them basically told me that, you know, NuSkin wouldn't make it in Japan, that this wouldn't work. And I knew that it would work. It was like, oh my gosh, it was the most frustrating week. I was just meeting with all of these people, and none of them saw the vision that I saw until my last appointment. And it's ironic that it was my last appointment, but I got onto the bullet train from Tokyo down to Osaka, and my dad was traveling with me because my dad felt sorry for me. So he's like, he didn't want me to go to Japan by myself. So I went over. Of course, you know, I don't speak a word of Japanese, so
Yep.
So he's there. We go down to Osaka, and we meet with my last appointment, and he was a medical doctor. And the farther you go out of Tokyo, there's less likelihood of English being spoken. And this person didn't he didn't speak a lot of English. In fact, I had a little flip chart. I was going through the whole presentation, and I'm not sure he was really understanding what I was saying, but he was locked onto me, and he just had these eyes. He just kept staring at me, and at the end of the presentation, he just said, "I have been searching."
Wow.
I mean, it was like, what? Anyway, he ended up becoming a Blue Diamond, way before me, and I had a business in Japan, and I never went back. I didn't want to leave my kids. I'd left them for that trip, and I look at the business today, and it's so much better because with technology, we don't have to do all the traveling that we had to do back then. But back then, it was really about road warriors, many of the people that you've already interviewed that were really on the road. They left their family. They were gone, and I wasn't willing to do that. But I did do it that one time, and it did pay off, and I found someone who I still get, paid from today. But anyway, my journey, I came back to the U.S. The environment here was not the greatest. In the 90s, it was very much about opening up other countries, so NuSkin proceeded with their business plan, which was brilliant, and there were a lot of countries that were open, and a lot of people made a lot of money, but I wasn't one of them. I mean, I was struggling. I was trying to find my way, and I'd kind of settled back into a time where I just I wasn't ever going to quit. That was the one thing. I had made a decision early on that I was never, ever going to quit, because Clara McDermott, who is the lead distributor, the number one person, the only person signed directly to NuSkin, when I started, I mean, she doesn't go around speaking now, but when I started, she did. And when she would speak, everyone would listen. And one of the things she would say all the time is that the only way that you can fail in NuSkin is if you quit. And I believed in NuSkin. I just hadn't yet decided to believe in me, but I knew that I just couldn't quit. So I'd made that decision early on. So I hadn't quit, but I'd pretty much gotten close to it as far as my activity level. I wasn't, I wasn't doing as much. I'd stop attending conventions. I'd stop attending events. I was on a slippery slope out, but I didn't even realize it until my friend, the same friend that called me the first time, she called me up and she said, "Eileen, they're going to launch a technology. The technology is going to change the world, the way people look at their health." And she explained it to me. At first, I didn't want to hear about it. I had such a bad attitude. It was horrible. And then she said, "No, listen." And she told me about the technology, and I immediately got the power of it. I knew that this, once again, the company had pulled the bunny out of the hat, and they had come up with something that the market would appreciate. And she invited me up to a conference. It was going to be the official launch of the technology. And even though I didn't want to go, I said I'd go. And oh my gosh, it was like it was the worst, horrible experience, because I was up there and I was just feeling so bad about myself. Looking around, there are people that had just come in the business like within months, that had been super excited, that already had gone all the way to the top, in months. Or there was one guy who went to the top in 15 hours. He got to Team Elite. And there I was.
That's not even possible.
I know. And
Wow.
there I was, as a lapis for forever. It had been 12 years since I'd started my business. And my daughter had so we have 3 kids. Our oldest is a girl, and then we have 2 boys. And our daughter, 6 months prior, had just left for college. So for those of you that have kids, when that first one goes to college, man, I was a mess. I mean, I was a wreck. I mean, my husband said, "Did someone die, or did I miss something?" Or I was in mourning. I mean, I was completely affected by that chapter closing. Even though I had my two boys at home, which I absolutely adore my two boys, it was like that first one, when that first one goes, it's, you realize that time isn't standing still and that, you know, things move forward. So, so anyway, I went to the conference. I was sitting there in the audience looking around, and I was literally having inside of my body a complete meltdown. I mean, it was horrible. I was feeling so bad about myself. I was comparing myself with everyone on stage. I was looking at this technology. I realized that, you know, all these years the company's never disappointed me. All these years the company's done exactly what they've said they're going to do. There's no doubt that it's possible because other people are doing it. It's absolutely, you know, going along as planned, and the only problem was me, you know, and where was I? Because my desire, my dream, I had literally let the fire of my dream get down to like barely a flicker. I mean, I still had the dream, but it was so far down there buried that I almost couldn't relate to it anymore. And so when, you know, I had my defining moment at that moment, because I literally just dug really, really, really deep, because I was feeling so bad that I had to figure out what was going on with me. And I just kept, you know, digging like deeper. There I am in the audience, and I'm going all through this internal stuff. I'm like digging deeper and deeper and deeper, and like, what is it? What's going on? I can't believe this. What's, you know, all this regret and all this disappointment with myself. And then I just realized that, you know, if I had a desire that, you know, that God gave me, then I know I have the ability to achieve it. And one of my core beliefs is that the human spirit is literally like, you know, so massive that we don't even have a way to comprehend it. And the human, you know, human beings can basically do anything that they want, and we have the ability to create ourselves. And what I, you know, realized at that moment was that the only person, the only thing that was stopping me was me. And that if I wanted it, I could have it, and I needed to make a decision, and I needed to get to work, and I knew I needed to change. And that's not easy. And I know that, you know, for most people, we avoid change. We stay in bad situations for much longer than we should because we don't want to face, you know, the uncertainty of what that change will mean. But I don't know who said it, but there's a really powerful saying that we use, and that is when the pain of staying the same finally becomes greater than the fear of the unknown or the fear of the change, then you'll change. And so I had made my reality in my mind like no longer bearable. Like I could not handle it anymore. I could not be the same anymore. I could not stand it anymore. And I got really angry, and I'm Irish, so, you know, I guess it's part of who I am, but I really, really got angry, and it was that emotion that propelled me into really making a definite decision, not just a decision that I was going to change the next day. And the decision was that I was going to be willing to do whatever it takes. I was going to do what my business coaches told me to do. I was going to ask them what to do, and then I was going to follow their directions. And not that I was uncoachable before, but I'm a little bit of a fighter, and I've come to realize being a fighter is a good thing, but it's a double-edged sword because you can, you know, I think being a fighter is what has kept me in the game this long. but also being a fighter can kind of keep you stuck too, because when you're a fighter, sometimes you fight against the wrong people, right? So somebody coaches you on something and you don't want to hear it, right? So so I knew that my greatest gift was also my biggest detriment, and that's often, what we discover about ourselves. But from that day and from that moment forward, I decided to be different. And I decided to, literally, it was a surrendering process. And I use that word, I know sometimes people think surrender as a weakness, but I use it as it's a very powerful word, because when you surrender to kind of acting in faith and going with, even though it's not easy, and just deciding to do the things that you don't want to do, and just like let go of the resistance, which I had been living in, massive resistance. So I let go, and the other thing that I made a decision on that day, which was super powerful, and I think it's one that everyone needs to really understand, and that is that I decided to change, but I decided to do it all joyfully. And what I mean by that is I decided to have fun. And even though I didn't want to do something, I was going to do it, and I was going to laugh doing it, And so from that moment on, I literally left that conference and I went into high gear, and I was a completely different person in the way that I approached everything. Like I went into massive action, and I just started talking to everyone, and I started putting myself out there and doing things that I hadn't, I really had not wanted to do before. Driving all over the place, which when you live in Southern California, it's not easy. I mean, just going from where I live up to like Los Angeles, it's a 2 or 3 or 4 hour drive, and it's stressful. So I decided I was going to do whatever it takes, and it was that willingness, and this is what I believe the power is. It's so simple now, looking back. I mean, it's literally so simple, and I try to teach as many people as that will listen to how simple it is. You have to have a dream, and you have to make that dream one that you're not willing to ever let go. Like you become obsessed, like that's the dream that you want, and you literally become obsessed with that dream. And there's many ways that you have complete control on making that happen. It's not something that you wake up one day and say, oh, I'm obsessed, or you're born and you're obsessed. No, you have to make yourself obsessed. Like you have to make it happen, and you have to become obsessed with your thoughts and with your visioning and all that. But once you do that, if you go into massive action, you're basically saying, hey, God, I'm ready to receive, because I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And then all of a sudden, the floodgates open, and things come to you faster than you could possibly imagine. And literally, I know that that's the truth of how it works, because that's what's worked in my life. I've seen it. I've lived it. And, not that we don't all have a tendency to go back to our old ways, because I'm constantly, working on myself to stay in that mode, like get a bigger dream, get a bigger goal, keep moving forward. But it's really, to me, the most fun thing about this business is we get to discover these things of how these things work, and then we get to teach it. And I'm loving teaching it to as many people as I can.
Eileen, oh my God. I just need to pause you just for a moment, because I've written out a page of points just listening to you then, and I'm so glad we're having this conversation. As we were saying before we hit record, your story is the story, I think, of a large proportion of the distributor force, who have committed to NuSkin, who love NuSkin, who have built something with NuSkin, but haven't truly committed to building it as big as they want to. And I think your story is just, it's this shining beacon for all of us, and myself included here. I have a bunch of questions around some of the things that you just shared. Just quickly, just in what you said about creating that that like obsession within your mind that you can't stop thinking about, that dream. Do you have any examples of activities that can help people create that burning desire?
Well, the one book that we really consider to be one of the cornerstones of all of this is the book Think and Grow Rich, which talks about, by Napoleon Hill, which talks about getting your definite main purpose statement together, and it's really getting of what you want your life to be. But before we started using that tool, and we teach that tool with our team exclusively. I mean, that we tell our team to do that. I mean, we have it part of their daily activities, and I mean, it changes your life once you start doing your definite main purpose statement. But even before that, I naturally, and I think we all have the ability, and I would hope, I think as children we have the ability to have an imagination, and we think about, I've always exercised my imagination. So I've always, would think about, well, where do I want to live, or what do I want to be doing? So, visioning and imagining, a dream of what you want has always been a part of my life. And also my parents were really instrumental in demonstrating in their lives the power of having a dream, because they had a dream of having a business. I witnessed, as I was growing up, them creating that business, it being successful. They also had a dream. They would always talk about they wanted to have a home that overlooked the ocean, and not just any view, but this particular view, like this exact spot. And they ended up getting that home. And so I've seen so many examples. Yeah, so I was a very close, part of my life. My parents are like my heroes. They showed me that even though they didn't necessarily teach it, they showed it by their example that that's how things work.
Would you say that's the best way to teach?
Well, yes, of course, right? So that is the best way to teach.
Which becomes very important for us building organizations to become that example. I'm really curious as to a couple of things. Number one, that you had that anger burning inside you. I could just feel it sitting at the event, 12 years of the lapis, the pain, the humiliation of being asked to like stand up and do testimonials and things, and oh yeah, that's Eileen who knows all about this stuff but isn't the blue diamond, and the questions that come with it. I could just imagine that, and then funneling that anger and that emotion to actually make a change. That seems like a very important distinction right there. But then I love the tweak that you put on it, which is joyful change, because so often I feel like, all right, in order to change something, it has to be hard. It has to be painful. And it's something big and scary, but that's just a choice, is what it seems like.
Well, yeah, the anger, just to talk about the anger for a minute, what happens to most of us when we get angry like that is, and what happened with me was the question I kept asking myself as I was sitting there, so disempowering, this question, but we do it to ourselves all the time. I know I'm not the only one, but the question I kept asking myself was, what is wrong with me? Like, what is wrong with me? Like, why me? What is wrong with me? Like, that is the question I kept asking myself until I just quieted myself down, and the answer was so clear. Nothing. There's nothing wrong with you. And that was so powerful. And, and so, but I believe God talks to me a lot. So that's just me. But but nothing's wrong with any of us. Nothing's wrong with any of us. Here's the thing. It's like everyone, wherever they're at the perfect place for where they need to be right now. And that's where I needed to be. And, I've been asked so many times, what would you do different? I wouldn't do anything different. I wouldn't do anything different because I've come to realize that that the fact that I went through what I went through is my gift. It's actually my gift to be able to give to other people. Like you said, to be able to say, I was a lapis for 12 years, okay? When I tell these new people that are coming in the business today and they're rising so fast, but maybe they're stuck at Ruby for like 3 months, they're so ready to quit. I'm like, okay, let me just tell you my story. I can't even believe it. They look at me like, do you have like there's something wrong with you? But anyway, to make a decision like that, to make it really stick and to do something different, you have to trigger an emotion. The emotion that I used was anger. I was mad. I was really, 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 really mad. I mean, I was so mad my blood was boiling. I mean, I was so mad that my hair on the back of my neck was like sticking out. I was like, wow, so angry. But that's why when I made that decision, I wasn't going to go back. Like that was it. There was nothing that was going to change. And I knew that I had to do it joyfully, Kurt, because if I did it, painfully, then I don't know if I would survive it. I think that joy, deciding to be happy like today is the key. So, one thing I've learned in all my personal development is that, I used to think, and many of us do think this way, that I will be happy when, I'll be happy when I become a team elite. I'll be happy when I make $1 million. I'll be happy when this, that, and the other thing. The problem is that doesn't, that's not the way it works. The way that it works is you decide to be happy and then you become a team elite and then you make $1 million. So it's like the reverse. It's the reverse. You have to decide to be happy first and be happy with everything the way it is. The other thing I decided to be okay with, because I really hated to talk about my story. I really hated to tell people I had been a lapis for 12 years. You have no idea how much I hated it. I mean, I hated it so much. I didn't want to speak. I didn't want to be on a conference call. I didn't want to be on a recording. I didn't want any of that because I was embarrassed. I was thinking, I was just horribly, horribly embarrassed. But then when I realized that the power is in that story, that it helps other people, then it becomes worth it. And then it's like, okay, I want to tell a story because I want to inspire people, because I want to help people see that wherever they're at right now is perfect for them. And if they want something different, they can do it. They can make a decision, and they can make their tomorrow completely different from today by just making a decision and just deciding to have fun and do the actions that you're resisting. I was resisting. I mean, I didn't want to talk to people. I didn't want to meet with people. You don't do too well in this business with that. So I was, I wasn't that confident in enrolling people, and I decided that I was going to become confident. I didn't want to speak in front of a room. I was scared to death, but I decided I was going to do it anyway, even though I thought I was going to throw up. I mean, I decided to do all of these things I didn't want to do, and there's so much power in that, I can't even tell you. There's so much power in that. And it's literally, I think it's like just, telling the universe or God, hey, I'm ready. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I'm ready. And then that's when you get it. And the same thing, and I don't know if you've heard my daughter's story, and maybe you should interview her separately, which would be so
I'm
powerful because
looking forward to it.
you have to, because her story is a little bit similar to mine. And she's on fire. I mean, she's completely on fire, which really excites me because I've been in the business for 28 years. I have no intention of not working. I love this business. It's so much fun because you get to see how all of this, for the people that actually embrace it, how it can change their life and how they can impact even more people across the world. And it just multiplies, and it just gets more and more and more fun.
Okay, I wanted to get to Ashley. Let's just pause here for a moment. I need to come back to what you just said. It was so powerful. It's a beautiful message. What you said is that you were afraid of sharing your story, and well, not afraid, but you didn't want to because it had a lot of pain associated and a lot of emotion associated. And I think this is a really beautiful message: is that the stuff that's happened in our past has already happened, and you can't change it, but you can transform it into a gift, which is what you are doing today. Every time you share that story, it becomes this gift for myself and for everyone who listens to it. And that's an amazing thing to be able to do. And you've just highlighted something to me that each and every single one of us can do that every single day. We can choose to transform the story of our past from something that holds us back to something that moves us forward and moves other people forward as well. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. I just want to ask quickly about Alan McGow.
Yeah.
And what have you learned from Alan McGow, and how did you meet Alan McGow?
Oh my gosh, great story. Well, so after I'd made this decision, I went into massive action, started to do everything my business partners, my coaches told me to do. And one of the things Jeff Mack told me to do was come to Utah every month. I'm like, what? And I said, okay. So I remember going up to the company, and then Jeff saw that I was serious because I was doing what he told me to do. And so he said to me, I'll come out and do a meeting in San Diego, but you better have 50 people in the room, which was a little challenge. You know, he has his rules, which is good. But I remember coming back from Utah, and I was really so excited, and Jeff was going to be coming that week to San Diego, and so I'm under pressure because I have to have 50 people in the room, and this name pops in my head of somebody to call, and it was kind of one of those intuition names that pops in your head, but you question, you're like, what? Because this guy I had actually worked for before, very powerful business guy, really great guy, but I'd sort of told him about it before, but it was before I'd made my defining decision that this was it. So I called, and his name's Jim, and I called up Jim, and I just said, Jim, I have your plan B, because the company that he was running at the time was always struggling, looking for money, and I said, I have your plan B. I want you to come to this hotel this day. I want you to bring your wife, Carol, and I want you to hear about it. And he said, okay. And it was like, wow, okay. So he came, and Jeff Mack presented the business. He and his wife, they looked at each other, they're like, we like it. And the next morning I met with Jim, and I just said, who do you want on your board of directors? Because I needed to speak his language. I said, this is a business that's global. We're going to be global. It's going to be a multi-million-dollar business. Who do you want on your team? And he said, well, that's easy. Number one, I want Alan McGow. So I had worked for Jim before. Well, Jim had worked for Alan before. So Jim had worked for Alan, and so Jim calls up Alan. He couldn't really reach him for like a week because Alan was up at this ranch in Northern California at a thing called Principia, which is a personal development workshop that's just, there's no cell coverage or anything. But the whole time that workshop's talking about, pummeling Alan with multiple streams of income. And anyway, he comes off of that seminar, and Jim tells him about NuSkin and the technologies that we were working on, and And he just immediately signed up. But it was really funny how he's really in the business, because he signed up, but you know, somebody can sign up and not really do much. Alan first told me, you know, 3 things. He says, look, I don't really like network marketing. I know you're in Utah. I'm never going to Utah. Don't even ask me. He said, I know you guys, you know, really like these night, you know, meetings. I'm not doing any meetings. He's like, I'm not going to any meetings. So we laugh about that now all the time, because he's the king of meetings.
I was going to say, he has done so many meetings.
Yeah,
I've attended a bunch of them.
I know, crazy. So, but this is what, you know, this is what he told me. And so, so it was a couple weeks in, and he was going to come over to California, and I invited him. I said, well, so why don't we from California go to Utah? Oh my gosh, he was so funny. He like almost didn't even respond to me because I had already crossed the line from so, but we had this little form that we had started to use, and one of the boxes on the form says, like, you checked off the box, and it said, I want to move slow, medium, or fast. Well, what do you think he picked? Of course, he picked fast. Mm-hmm. And the next box said, I'm willing to do whatever it takes, and you check it off. So when it was like silent about the Utah trip, I said, Alan, this is what you need to move fast. And so he was good. He said, okay, he would go. So, but anyway, he's funny. But anyway, when he'd come over to California, Jim and I threw him in the car and took him to his first meeting, which was a meeting up in Orange County at a guy named Dan McCormick's house. You probably know Dan. I do. And yeah. On the way to the meeting, he said, oh, I've got this guy that we should call, Steve Wong. And so he ended up calling Steve Wong. It was like his first person to really call. And we talked to Steve, and Steve was in another network marketing company at the time. And Steve immediately tried to talk Alan into going to looking at his business. It was so funny. It was the funniest phone. It was literally the funniest phone call ever. And Alan said, no, Steve, I'm calling you, and I want you to come here. So anyway, Steve came to hear Jeff Mack. Jeff was at a meeting in LA, and then Jeff called me and said, you've got to follow up with this Steve and Sherry, because they could be amazing. I mean, Jeff literally saw in Steve and Sherry, saw that they could be really good. So we ended up meeting with Steve. Just on a side note, I'm interviewing Steve tomorrow. Oh my gosh. So we ended up, Alan and Jim and I, driving to LA to meet with Steve and Sherry and go through the comp plan. And we were literally at their house till like 1 in the morning, because he couldn't meet with us till 11 o'clock at night. So which for those that know me, they laugh so hard because I'm like asleep at 9 at night. I'm not a night owl. So when he said we can LA at 11, the willingness to do do whatever it takes, it was really being exercised right then. So, but I didn't get home till like 3 in the morning. The next day, Alan and Jim, they're off doing something else, and Sherry calls me and she wants to meet again. I go to LA, and I end up going to LA 3 times, and we ended up signing them up and getting them. They wanted to become executive, and back then, fast tracking to executive wasn't that common. But they said, we want to be an executive. Can we become an executive? And it was 3 days before the end of the month. And Alan didn't even know. He was back in Hawaii, and he was just doing his thing. And I don't even think he knew that they had even LOI'd or, really that they were, in big time, but they're like, we want to be executives by the end of the month, and they ended up doing it, and it wasn't easy. It was there were all kinds of different things you had to do. There were all kinds of qualifications. Anyway, I won't even go through it, but they did it, and so it was Halloween, October 31st, and anyway, what happened was the company ended up tracking down Jim and Alan and telling them that Steve had become an executive and that they could become an executive too. And so, which they were not happy about, by the way, which is really it's a whole other story, but it's so funny. But really, Alan got locked into the business because of Steve. And it was really an amazing driving the line scenario that worked out well, because it's just been, I know that the two of them have loved working together all of these years, and it's just been really, really fun to see. And then both of them have had their own journey and their own struggles, and they've come through it. And Alan, Alan's a really incredible person. And I remember one time, and it looks like he had immediate success, and he didn't. He had a lot of struggles, and there were a lot of things. And it was one time there was a challenge with one of the things, a project within the business we were working on that it was really funny, because he said, Eileen, you don't ever have to worry about me. I never quit. I'm like, okay. So, the biggest key is you can never quit. And I believe that if you really make that decision and you keep moving forward, you'll figure it out. And it may take long, it may take a short amount of time. There's people coming in the business right now that are, they're not hitting a challenge until they hit Team Elite. I mean, they're just going straight to the top. But at some point, you'll be challenged, and it's all about becoming the person that you were meant to be. And challenge is there for a reason, and it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And, we need to embrace that and move through it and just learn from it.
Eileen, just to be conscious of your time, I've got like two remaining questions. I've got a whole bunch more than that,
okay.
So we'll shorten it down. I'm curious did you have like a workflow when you decided and you're like, all right, that's it, I'm doing whatever it takes. Could you give us an idea of what your day-to-day looked like? Like, were you waking up and just doing phone calls to people, or what was the workflow for that?
Well, that was back when we were launching the technology, the biophotonic scanner, and I'd say today is a completely different, world than we did back. But I actually, 3 or 4 days of the week, I was out. I was out of the house. I was out with the scanner. I took that device. I took that technology, and I just took it out. I showed people. I was out of the house. And of course, there were also phone calls. This was what?
This was when it was a really big device, not the sleek little wireless thing that we have today.
Oh my gosh. It was like a coffin. It was like it was a coffin on wheels. No, it looked like a big musical instrument, or somebody with like a giant, but no, there was nothing easy about it, but we just had fun with it, and we showed people, and I was excited. I was, you just have, whatever it is, you just have to be excited, and people love that. And so I'm structured, and then I'm not structured. I mean, I'm structured in a sense where I'm pretty habitual. I get up really early in the morning. I'm a very early riser. I like this, so I don't like to stay up late, but I like to get up at like 4:30 in the morning. I just love it.
Oh, wow.
I don't know, there's something about the morning I love. I just love it. And
you have like a morning
I love to work out. Well, I get up in the morning, and it's kind of my time where I like to read. I like to make my list for the day of what I want to get done. I have my coffee, and I kind of just have my time, and then I like to go to the gym or work out or do something. I do exercise every day. I have to do that for my, just for my health. And then, you know, a lot now we're doing a lot on the internet. I mean, right now there's days I don't even drive a car. I mean, I don't even leave my house. It's kind of bad, but we're just having so much fun with technologies and doing meetings over, you know, Zoom and Facebook Lives, and
that
you know,
brings me to the second question. Ashley, so I mean, the landscape today is completely different to, I mean, the tools that we're using are completely different to when you were building and growing rapidly. I'm like, and you've got such a great perspective on today and when you were building. So you got like the best of both worlds here. Can you share just briefly Ashley's story, because I'd love to interview her herself, and what is happening in the US right now, like on social media? Because from Australia we're watching and it looks insane. It's like people are becoming just so fast.
Really fun. Oh, so fast. So, well, so when I had my defining moment, she had just gone to college. So all she experienced with NuSkin growing up was struggle and pain with her mom, you know. So her experience of NuSkin growing up wasn't great. So she's away at college. She's up in Oregon, which is quite a ways away. And I just take off. I mean, my business just starts to explode, and we're starting to do, you know, whatever. And then they named me Woman Entrepreneur of the Year, and she's like, "What happened to Mom?" You know. So she's looking at that, and then she's getting close to graduating, and she was going to be a sports broadcaster. So she had met with a counselor there, and they basically gave her it was a good thing, they gave her the reality of that deal, and that deal is that, you know, you really don't make a lot of money. You start in a very small town, you know, you're going to work your butt off, and you may not make it, all that story. So she just was like, what? And so she looked at me, and she said, hey, she called me up, and she said, Mom, what I really want to do is work with you. And I was like, whoa, I was so excited. So she graduated. She started NuSkin when she graduated, and that was like 12 years ago. And so she graduated, started NuSkin. She was also doing some part-time jobs and things, and she, you know, she got to executive, and then she got to Lapis, and then she got to Ruby, and she went on a Ruby trip, and then she went down to Lapis, and then went down to Gold, and then up to Lapis. I mean, so for 10 years, it was, you know, hard. It was really hard. And she never really, I mean, she was so great. She was really into personal development. She'd done a lot of courses. She really worked on herself. And she has a lot of incredible skills, like amazing communication skills. She's a phenomenal person. She's like amazing, huge heart, like perfect. But she never really had like a burning, like, why, you know. So then she got married 3 years ago, I guess. She got pregnant right away. She had her son. So she had her son in 2016, the end of August 2016. And then she kind of had a little bit of, you know, challenge because her business, it was hard to kind of maintain. And then you've got hormones and, you know, maybe a little depression. And it was sad. It was hard. It was really hard. And it was also a hard year in the U.S. because we were going through kind of some transition, and it was right before social media had sort of been happening in the U.K. We've been sort of watching it, and, you know, we went through the same thing that everybody goes through, like, how do you make money on toothpaste? Like, it just didn't make sense to us, and none of it was making much sense, but we were, you know, trying to figure it out, and we were in this huge transition in the U.S. And it was 2016 was a really rough year. And then 2017, we started to hear about, you know, some people in the U.S. and some of her friends, Rebecca Morris in particular, who's a great leader here in the U.S., she had jumped into social media with Laura Call as a coach, and they jumped in, and I really give it to them because they really pioneered a lot here in the U.S. with nobody else wanting to do it. and they figured a lot of stuff out. But by the beginning of 2017, we were hearing stories. People were coming in and they were making huge amounts of money and this and that. We're like, wait a minute. And so Ashley had her defining moment. She knows the exact date. See, I don't even know the exact date, but it's funny because it was around the same time of year. So it was February 20th, 2017, and I was in Argentina. I was on a trip in Argentina. I was traveling around, and I'll never forget. And she called me up and she said, "That's it, Mom. I've had it. I'm doing it like this." And I've never heard her voice. I've never heard her like this. Like she was so. I think she was angry like me. Maybe she has the Irish blood too.
There's a lot of parallels here to the story.
Yeah. So she literally. She was like a different person, and she just went into massive action. Well, by March 1st, so she closes out February. I come home from my trip, and she closes out February, and she's basically just an executive. She doesn't have anything else. She had let go of any other people that were holding on, and that energy, which I give it to her because I think you have to be willing to let go of people in this business too, because that allows you then to have the energy to really find the right people.
Yeah.
And so, so then March 1st, we sat down with a big whiteboard, and I said, okay, now at that time we had a success trip, and the success trip qualification was going to end that month. So it was she had till March 31st, and she had to get to Emerald, which was 6 frontline executives. Because she'd already been on a Ruby trip. She already had been on a Ruby trip. So I looked at her in the eye and I said, okay, Ashley, you have to break 6 executives on your front line in 30 days. And she just, you should have seen her. I mean, her eyes, she had like fear, like she had so much fear in her eyes. But I said, Ashley, can you just do this one thing? Can you hold in your mind every day that it's possible? Like never entertain that it's not going to happen. Can we do that all month? Like, can we do that? And she said, I can do that. And so we got the whiteboard out and we just started drawing circles, the 6 circles across, and we said, what are the names of the people? We started putting in names, and every single day, I mean, she had a simple goal of she said, I'll sign up, I'll enroll one person a day. And so she would enroll one person a day, and for free. I mean, how hard is that? I mean, this is like, it's a whole different business now, right? So you enroll somebody, you launch them, and they haven't spent a dime. I mean, that's not a hard thing to do. So it is and it isn't, right? It is, you have to find the people. But so she goes to work, and March 31st, which is my birthday, she did it. She had 6 executives break, and she made that trip. And so she made the trip to Iceland. It was a trip to Iceland, and which qualified me to go because I was her upline, and that's how it worked back then. So the 2 of us are there in Iceland, and she came back, but that was, the Iceland trip was later. But so then after March 31st, April 1, they announced the next trip. And she just worked so hard. Like she went into just massive action every day. But here's what is so crazy what happened, because on May 19th my dad died. So we're talking April. So March she had that incredible growth. From April to May 19th, she's going to town. And then my dad died, which is really, it was like the saddest thing that any of us in our family have ever had in our life. I feel very fortunate at this age to be able to say that, but because I had him, for a long time. But it threw all of us into just a complete coma. But the blessing is that my dad got to see her successful. And I said, Ashley, he waited for that, I mean, he waited for that, and then it was okay, for him to, because he saw her struggle. But it was about 40 days of just massive growth. And then when my dad died, we were all I'd say for a month. I mean, we were I don't know, we didn't even know where we were. We were I don't know, what day is it? We just trying to live our life. Mm-hmm. But her business kept growing. And so by the next success trip, she now has, she had 16 accounts qualified for the next success trip.
16 accounts. Oh my God.
16 accounts, and then she's already got, and then the next trip, which just ended, Bermuda, the qualification just ended. She almost doubled that. She's at 27 accounts, and she might be one of the very few that doubled, the number of qualifiers just in one success trip. But she already has 4 new Blue Diamonds, and 3 of them are in qualification for Monaco for Team Elite. So between her and her team, there's five Blue Diamonds, and 3 of them are in qualification for Team Elite. And her team is on fire. I mean, it literally is on fire, and it's all mindset. These mainly women, young moms. I think back of when I started and I was a young mom, and I thought, my dream was to help young moms, and now I get to really help young moms because this business is such an incredible business for anyone, and especially for somebody that's challenged with working outside the home, or needs flexible hours, or needs that ability just to fit it in to their life. So
it comes back to what you said at the very beginning, how you were introduced to the business. So your sponsor rang your husband because he was in sales, right? And that's the perception of what would make a good network marketer is a good salesperson. And it's often not the case, right? It's the person who wants it and needs it the most.
Exactly, and sees it as a vehicle, really a vehicle to achieve any dream that they have in their life. And that's really the way that we look at it, is that this business will help you get whatever it is that you want in your life. It'll help you, do anything. So, and mainly it'll help you become a better person, a better mom, a better friend, a better leader, a better mentor, a better coach. I mean, it'll help you with all of those skills which are needed in the world. The world needs leaders. The world needs people that care about, other people and want to help and mentor other people. And so I just think that there couldn't be a better business in the world because of what this can give to people, and the satisfaction and the fun and the challenge, and the ability to overcome those challenges. And really it's just such a, every time I think about this business, I just think I couldn't have even imagined a better business. There's nothing about it that could be better. It's just so good.
Eileen, this has been so good. This is more than I could have hoped for. Thank you so much for sharing so freely and for all that you do, because I keep coming back to what you said before about not wanting to share your story, but it truly is a gift, and it helps so many people. This call is going to help everyone who listens to it, so I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Kurt. Thanks for having me on, and it was really nice talking to you. And yeah, if it helps one person, then I've done my job.
You've done an amazing job. So for everyone tuning in, I hope you've taken some incredible notes. I've filled out a couple of pages already. I'm going to go back through and listen to this many times. Tune in next week. We will have more interviews coming on the Tribe of Leaders, and Steve Huang is coming up. So that's particular to your team there, Eileen. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.
Thanks.